Hello, America. I put links to a video regarding treatments of the name Joe Rogan and by the news of the person as a individual of humanity regarding finite fact treatments, premises treatments, fact treatment nature qualities and aspects that are being and having been offensively prevented at formal locations, informal locations, and at all locations, sickly distinctly since founding proper premises treatments. And so this is in conjunction, in collusion slash S with what I caught them doing on and off the campus of each age and nature connected through time. Control of the mind. So I only saw, for example, there's a Fred Grisette, who's a stranger, sought me out to pretend other with others in different, and that's recorded a whole bunch of ways. Involved with only saw him with uh, a Ray Clo one time in my life, in other words. And that's one of the names that's involved with Weathersfield Police with wire crimes. Granted, too, forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading them to roles with judges and their family members that make little kids, in other words, kids of the intelligence community. But it's that what happens is that people have roles with the breaching method, everyone, A through Z. For example, also when there's link to Denise or D'Souza, Mr. D'Souza, with his podcast regarding what Jim Crow laws are about, which is also a good example of where and how people with the most knowledge of each subject use that to get over on correlation nature's actually inherent act and progressive means. And uses by needs to be able to talk how to use what is hyper evidential to answer our questions. We have to be taught how to think correctly. And when that we are taught how to think correctly, we have to have means to counter where other people originally and still would attach us to and others around us to fake words and make fake exceptions, where and how there are forced roles with uses of that at interbranch locations. For example, when I refer to formal locations, refer to it formally because the exception nature tied to them. And people should know instantly what I'm speaking about with this. We should know right up front. Branches of government are manifest by nature, forcing those qualities manifest as the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the political branch slash S bound. And but with the exception nature, like military and interbranch and private tied to them, like prisons, like on off the state prison offices, on off the state judicial branch. These are all database relationships. These are all names tied to people with positions at campuses that spoke for things like integrity or non-integrity. You know, the way after having had replaced the short words in that which is hyper evidential and actually recorded at each age of factory nature, at each age and nature of campus, because that was also victims individually grouped together, motivations, natures, needs, interests, exploited back at all locations where there is timed offensive identity theft, fraud, slanders. So there are police forms. They use spots next to a Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. That is in this conversation with me, slash each, slash all of us. And where they're forging and switching names at locations on and off campuses and interbranch. So they prevent people from response because of all these crime methods, where and how, they have the FBI leaderships, CIA leaderships, state police, where they go to campus, then how they are manifest defending themselves. So in other words, everyone A through Z, and people fighting with each other, they're defending screens and quality of fact treatments or convictions, premises treatments that deny that are offensively designed to deny the finite, values, like, for example, where and how. finite grouped in together values, where and how they are denied when Jim Crow laws are brought up, the concept of it. So it was, in other words, Mr. D'Souza did research on Jim Crow, and in other words, he was speaking about how it was manifest with people who did cartoonage, and how about it begins the video about to answer what Jim Crow laws were about, speaking about politics. Because also politics originally and still was measured and maintained by a breaching method, measuring and maintaining self-cultivated roles, blaming other things, others, or selves, what nature was and is capable of demonstrating, because it is doing so increasingly, where and how breaching method applied things like treatments of the word black in the law. One can't treat properly what Jim Crow laws are about if one can't treat properly where and how black was forced in the law by what no one wanted rules with. Had uses by that had nothing to do with color, had nothing to do with racism, had to do with what was being exploited and engineered as a fact, relevant to fact treatment nature qualities, premises treatments, qualities, and defenses of them, increasingly incapable of affording any individual uses by what is hyper correlated. This is really how it uses by the value of what is simultaneous. Simultaneously, where and how black and white is being used. Not, of course, it's going to be relevant to where and how people are hurt sickly. But in other words, everyone's still fighting to keep how hurt sickly used to keep how collusion with how sickly non-distinctly self-value. They don't understand the extent of it because it is completely originally and still fact treatment nature oriented, predicate action method roles that knew that sustained would value roles at all locations within as identity the ground locations of formal, informal, where every member of that location would have to hide sequence shifts, finite active progressive lies timed against complete strangers, people they know, for the same method. And we have them engineered to motivations, natures, needs, interests, individually grouped and together in collusion. And that would, we could discern this because even the motivations, see, by preventing quality of fact, nature at location through the interbranch, and they knew they would have roles needed to hide from and hurt, value being and having been hurt. Correlation nature is actually inherent active aggressive means. For example, when they speak about positive or negative, if any honesty in trying to really care with the quality of fact, treatment nature, we need to care up front in sequence with American history. That means understand before you bring up Jim Crow, anyone. Not you, Mr. D'Souza. I'll just use his link on Jim Crow because he did more research on it than most people, than me. But see, he wants to, in other words, but how I know more about it? Because I'm not leaving out what his logic sells values is where and how, and it's being used and hasn't been used for things that have nothing to do with that. Black with the law, Native American treatments with the law, and passions and emotions by racial treatments are recorded and involved with families differentially criminally foreign influence, but differentially increasingly. So, for example, one of the only reasons that we never used this value, where and how it is all the different immigrants, A through Z, all these different countries, but Black and Native Americans are constantly increasingly hurt by the fact-keeping nature, non-sophistication slash sophistication that stayed and stays in collusion, not just as colonies that were used remotely, not just as colonies individually grouped and all together. Humanity's only database, conjunction to the value of the republic for which we stand in the campus system, tactically denatured, that which was native pure, that which is hyper simultaneous, not invented to be systems other than the only one that is perfect and perfectly increasing, besides the one that is perfectly increasing, because it's a mimic of that. So they obviously had to make means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, natures, other than natural ways, because they tactically denature our identity of ground locations, force people to mass farming. We're stuck like that, and everyone already blamed on other things, others, ourselves, the causes of it. So when they do research or something like that, it's still arrays of opinions, A through Z, in collusion against anyone who wants to use how we think properly, anyone who wants to use quality of sequence that came before, the truth of the value of the truth of that here now. And people deny such. And again, we're offensively with physical delusions, all kinds of theories too. So they have to pretend, for example, when they speak about emotions like anger of their own, they have to, hide their actual motivations. See, people, but this was having been sustained, so it gave everyone means it needs to. So they recorded themselves valuing means to have an inherent, active, and progressive means to lie, like to pretend it's for their kids. That why they were doing roles with collusion. They also pretend they don't know about, because they don't know the extent of it. But people know that they have. Like if you're with a if you run a court that's involved as witch trials, you did evil. You don't know the extent of what you did. You just know that you did it, and you pretend your integrity anyway. But the witch trial, in other words, they were at collusion. That's collusion at the locations. That's collusion with the real causes of crazy negative value nature progressions, acts, natures at location, acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal associates, natures, wrongdoers, wrongdoing itself. I'm not a lawyer. The lawyers are recorded originally and still being and haven't been in collusion, so they didn't come to the right, correct answers, because that's the right answer. The breaching method put black with the law, and to keep it blamed on other things, others themselves, and to keep evidences that people would use to justify it. Oh, look, why are we in this trap, New York City? And blaming what? Exactly what the breaching method put to blame. White, a whole bunch of different countries, and leaving out how they have black international fact-checking nature, legal writers with their opinions and convictions, roles with this, with our identity convictions, their roles with this. Psychology, psychiatry, they've been sick with the courts and the prisons, delusions regarding this. Simultaneously, criminally foreign influence, premises, treatments, quality, fact-checking nature, qualities, aspects, regarding what's black, regarding what's racism. They want and need the locations, areas, and states of each age of fact-checking nature fighting with each other, or pretending they fought with each other, and are making people have conflicts, things like that, so they could hide they could use truth for lies, and increasingly in conjunction with overt lies. Then more and more things get locked. People get locked. They call the police on themselves, the police forms. They are recorded being so there is an Eric Oliveri, and there is a There are men and women that were involved with Central Connecticut State University and with Trinity College and locations next to it when I was a kid, who were attaching me and other kids to fake locations on Zion Street. And then they've been exploiting it every once in a while to try to make exceptions, because these are people that are planting evidences at locations. Then they call themselves before courts and police force. They type things on Facebook with the police and courts criminally involved. I caught them with a principal sex offender with more than now involved criminally. As the ones that put them away too, even if they made it up, especially differentially, still, I caught them. That's what's actually recorded. And with Connecticut news predicate acts, not wrong, not fake news, which obviously new people involved with news predicate acts are involved with fake news. These are police forms that give the news investigators the right to lie. They have roles with like being coached, by communications people that cover up the lie progressions from where and how the Constitution inherited abridged originally and still it cannot afford to have the Constitution unabridged defended toward as an individual's voice. And it showed and shows the kids and the extended family members of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the interbranch government, the three individually grouped and together, all lawyers tied to them, private, formally, all identity ground locations. This is why, in other words, people aren't following mandated law as the people pretending to be about mandated law since founding. That's one of the things that Jim Crow law is about. Mandated law and the Constitution unabridged. The value of Madison, Marbury versus Madison, it was and is offensively being, prevented. Its value, which is increasing. Its nature, which is increasingly value as nature too. So Jim Crow laws are about a predicate acts delivery system method. Jim Crow laws are about a criminal insidiousness and delivery system method. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police form, I'm not a journalist either. See, one needs to have a license to be a journalist. See, they've been exploiting with it. The journalists want to keep their sources. So all their positive and negative treatments and their defenses of it, I have to eat. I don't have means to go check my. In other words, they've been influencing the journalists since they were on campuses of each age and nature. They are connected into cities, including fire campuses, and where and how they share the same countries where they go hard on it. Oh, let's yell at Putin. Let's call Putin names, not real premises treatments. Part of the reason is why they have, in other words, these are people that are also these are news locations that are also involved with where and how we share those countries individually grouped and together. Everyone was being hurt by this breaching method through them in groups too, unchallenged, because individually and grouped, they never had a sophistication that wasn't under that one. They call sophistication being able to guide a missile while they were on, since before cars were invented, the suburbs having been designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, let alone New York City. So slavery was in the North and in the South. See, where they pretend things are about, where they pretend voting is the most critical issue, because they left out where the North and South were in collusion with the slavery, criminally foreign influence, and where they pretend it's about racism and hate, those hate groups. There's a Kamal Bell with CNN. I saw on television. I don't know if it's on the internet. They have different things on their YouTube pages than they have on their regular website. But I saw it on television. CNN has Kamal Bell and up with KKK themed people who are recorded involved on off Central Connecticut State University involved with federal crimes with black and white female judges and leaders of courts, like New Britain Superior Court, Hartford courts, and ones that work for them, and the male judges that work for Hartford courts, New Britain Superior Court, other courts through time since I was a kid and since before everyone was born. Boxing is born. No, excuse me, I was just keeping it light. Boxing is might, so they prevent offensively mandated law and they replace at interbranch locations where no one is looking faked audio and video, fake ties between people, including the Wethersfield Police Department, for example, one of the interbranch locations, included with the family members on off New Britain Superior Court, also acting at locations through time to pretend they know people, trying to go, well, that, why did you shake his hand? Non-verbally, Eric Mendez confirmed at New Britain Superior Court his roles with principal sex offenders campus and with attaching little kids through time to fake locations with investigators and with his brother with police form and people associated with him like a Yagman family involved with drugs and medicine crimes, identity thefts and frauds, falsified police reports, fake words with other people on the police department, fake that never had communication through time. They did this to little kids too. When I was a kid, they were using. I never had anything friendly to do with Chris Walters. I only know him and making confessions about overt criminal enterprises and Wethersfield police attaching him to as a stranger to that. With all his confessions were also confirmed where other people confessed, like a O'Brien family with police forms, Wethersfield police, people associated with Wethersfield police chiefs through time in Hartford police forms, and FBI who were involved with other countries and federal criminal enterprises with the same lies and lie progressions, illusions, sequence shifts, on off, coordinated on and off job sites, on off campuses, intercities. Through time, there's a method that kept and keeps everyone needing to hide the same life, but not legitimately. So the corner of Elm Street and Route 3 has people involved with a Oliveri family that I don't know the name of, men and women with their kids in each age of their intelligence community. And Eric Oliveri, I only know him a couple times. There were made exceptions. And he's involved with a Joshua Stryker with predicate acts in identity thefts and frauds and people switching and forging names into branch and on and off Trinity College, on and off Central Connecticut State University, as also their roles with way worse than just election crimes, uses of town offices, uses of religious spots. Note where they have elections too. And note that they don't put, they're like, the mandated law says if you want to report a specific act like rape threats, also shows that's when there were those such at an election spot, they wouldn't let me do it. That's why I didn't vote when Obama was there too. It's all fake because it has nothing to do with black and white, where and how you guys defend black and white treatments, where you guys fight to defend racism treatments. Oh, but what about the inclusion? You won't admit, in other words, if someone wants to defend, simultaneously saying that the people of New York City are free, in that little breaching method trap set up, they're gonna demonstrate criminally foreign influence, fact nature premises, fact cheap nature aspects and qualities. And that are going to even be increasingly evidence as why and how we can reveal instantly reliefs for the people of New York City and across the globe. In Russia, they have suburbs since before cars too. England doesn't even remember their history. All locations, areas, and states of modern countries, everywhere their species, identity, or volume is, people are using criminally foreign influence, positive and negative treatments. And for a method that uses remotely defenses of that, already did it, perfected it. So everyone says, oh, I didn't cause those things. All right. But increasingly, everyone can't afford who, and when using syntax, how, and opinions and convictions properly. So increasingly, everyone's self-valuing preaching method having been propagated physical delusions, like with isms, like with science, but that's the Democrats with the Republicans. If they say things that are lies, because that's what the law says they could do, it didn't mean they could. That those lies are being relied upon at other locations. The founders left us to show the North and South as sides that were forced, not real, just like the black and white. The only thing that's real is the Constitution unabridged in Marbury versus Madison. For my father, in common sense, quote, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. So there are women and their families associated with Trinity College who were influenced at corner when I would come around the corner at school. They would know where I was going to be, and they were influenced. They were in a conversation with my neighbor. One of them called Ray Colol, and his father's name is Ray Colol too. And there were people with the name Joe DeMar. And there's a former Mayor Gold's wife, Mayor Gold's daughter, and they're an O'Brien family, and they have religious spots involved with this identity theft, fraud, slander method, where also they have the kids of people A through Z, their differences being and having been employed remotely used for the identity theft fraud method that also has their motivations, them pretending their motivations. And because those motivations are also being screened for what we actually have correlative means to discern. We have obligations to. So in other words, the town offices and the roles, pretending they didn't realize they made mistakes in cases, interstates, every state, sickly distinctly, and with instances treatments at locations. One of the Russian family members with the name Peruta, also with Russians, I don't know the name, woman Russian, involved with foreign and domestic families with psychology, psychiatry, including military police. They colluded with people from Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, or not Kuwait, the place right next to Iraq. And they colluded with the people with the Iraq war. So we have that we have people through wars having been roles of collusion with what is also involved with that, with houses at the end of at the corner of Church Street and Main Street in Old Weathersfield, which one line goes right there, walk right there, go skip to where George Washington had to leave slavery tragedy here in Weathersfield. The other direction, right there, to is a witch trial place in Weathersfield, Connecticut, where right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, he had to come here. He had to counter extort. See, what is increasingly valued to understand under American history is about how and why our founding parents had to counter extort the other founding parents. They had to pretend narratives that really led up to the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the spirit of liberty narratives, where you can't defend liberty till you defend freedom. See, that was the only way they had that was forced, because they were pretending passions and emotions relevant to the laws that were standing, an extortion method, a slavery method, a torture method. If they did anything else, they were aware of it. So they were making positive and negative treatments, identity treatments that couldn't defend themselves and afford a voice that would answer the same questions properly, historically and now. Fake branches bow and fall in their seat. So they must receive. who disbelieve. So, in other words, critical race theory, Fox News, they made them defend that. So the FBI never had integrity a whole bunch of ways is recorded. And increasingly they self-value where and how they had and have roles with each age of fact treatment nature, where they're like crazy outside of campuses and sickly distinctly inside of campuses with the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones. And people that know other people's names from the background before they do. They have uses of that and of their emotions and of their motivations pretended legitimate. And so this is also relevant to where and how you could probably you could tell not only where someone's lying, but their motivations. And not on, but you can't tell by looking at using it relative to something that is discernible. I mean, invisible but discernible alone. In other words, when you're dealing with it, in other words, this is all for example, Tom Peruta, as people with a name Peruta. I don't know the guy's first name. Never had a response to him just one time. In other words, there are more than one, and that's a different. That my Saudi friend is different than the Saudi. I don't know the name of the guy with Rock Hill Athletic Center in the corner of Route 3 and and Elm Street and all along Route 3. People like there's a Eric Oliveri family that is the first house when you come over the bridge on Route 3. I don't know if he still lives there or who lives, if his family still lives there. And then you go a little further and there's the state judicial branch offices. And there's a little road between them. That little road between them has an Enzo Fienzo also involved with that spot in Weathersfield, also involved with those spots in Rocky Hill, where a Ray Claw, a Mike Kerr, and a Joe DeMauro confessed, recorded, and demonstrated. There were some judges, and there were some people involved with police forms that were also involved with overt criminal enterprises, even if they were involved with that because they're undercover, whatever, or training, especially differentially too, as evidence. In other words, they were planting fake evidences, and they were using confessions. Regardless, also they don't let people talk about because the confessions show how people actually in other words where they were influencing people to plant evidences, fact cheap nature oriented too. And that being and having been extended was and is way worse and worse. Things never gotten better. They put black used with the law to make things worse and worse and have them blame the other things, others themselves, and have them real motivations or pretended needed real, or it was being used remotely. But where it's being used remotely is where people are defending themselves as fake sides. So there are a whole bunch of people that are KKK, Confederate flag themed, involved with also black family members, and like a Kamal Bell, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with and switching and forging names with the courts where they have the remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of judges relative to this. So a whole bunch of countries individually grouped in together as pseudo sophistication want to use, and need to use the most knowledge of things to get over on correlation natures actually inherent active aggressive means. They want to use other people's names as premises treatments. And they want and need everyone of each age sickly to do this. In other words, so in the news, they have Joe Rogan and they keep making complaints about him, but they don't bring up what he said. They don't bring up his actual premises treatments. They're just using his name and making conspiracy theories against him, which the news is recorded as one of the private companies involved with the interbranch locations every day, having more and more already haven't been making conspiracy theories faking evidences to do. Excuse me, ma. All right. So a predicate acts delivery system. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police former, not a criminal. Relative to treatments of black and white, relative to what actually forced it and how it was actually used, and their defenses of saying other and how they got away with it and get away with it. The FBI and whatever other agencies that speak for the law and the intelligence community, the branches of government individually grouped in together, there is a worse than just criminal incompetence being and having been used remotely. You know, so we have to deal with what I caught them doing between campuses, connecting it, including private campuses. So there is a modern pastry that people that run a Mazzucato pastry are involved with Wethersfield Police Chief. They're involved with his extended family members, and there's a Fred Grisey, and there's a Tim O'Brien, and Ray Clough that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed also with some CJ. I think his name is CJ from Central Connecticut State University. I never had a conversation with him one time. I apologized one time. I fought, made him fight with me because he was with two other kids and himself that were brought up by the people involved with. And I lost the fight, but and it was bigger than me. And there was already violence involved when I was in grammar school. And so this guy also, I found out, and he was from another town. But so now he also has roles with a modern pastries family. And people have been lying to them about me from behind my back because they brought it up in their confessions. And it didn't make sense what they're doing. It has something to do with their uses of the corners of the streets next to schools and businesses, including the post office, till next to the South Street Middle School, and their roles with the Phil Colo and with the confessions of people from Whiting Forensics place that is also with state police families in their campuses where they were raised, and their crimes with their patients and criminals before they got caught, and against innocent people. And I witnessed them with their narratives of how they've been getting away with it, hiding their life progressions, remote uses of those types of jobs, those types of locations. Every individual, and these are courts also. There are more judges and foreign and domestic people involved on off Trinity College and CCSU, with people that are involved with identity thefts and frauds, with the South Street Middle School and the public school the private school next to it, and the businesses next to it. There's a Zano family involved with identity theft, fraud, and where they're putting fake things in databases. And he's involved with with this in the background, where they're putting with the intelligence community with identity theft, fraud, slander rules, which is one of the things that Jim Crow's laws are about. They call it segregation, and the breaching method measures and maintains them, blaming on other things other than themselves, what it did and does, and use it because it uses it for other things. And it measures and maintains roles, needs, nature's called blaming on other things. There's redistricting problems because there's corruption at the town offices. Wethersfield town offices, a whole bunch of people intercities got. There's proofs that it is Robert Cheverie is the name of one of the lawyers. There were lawyers involved with a Gold family and a former Mayor Gold family, and there's a Morin family, a Julie Morin, who was in my fourth grade class, and there's a Sal Civiola. I never saw Julie Morin outside of class. One time in my life, I won communications with her on Valentine's Day in the class, and I never had a bad problem with her. Never had communications with her though. Too. I minded my business. I was a polite kid. Okay, thank you.